everybody, and welcome to the first official Nocturnal Frequency, the full 2-hour show. Unfortunately, my co-host, Kay Kingston, couldn't make it tonight. She's feeling a little under the weather, so sitting in for her tonight is good friend Gary Holgate. Welcome, Gary.
Hey, Steve. How you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm pretty good.
I'm really excited tonight. Tonight we have a special guest with us, Dave McRae, the director of the upcoming film Port Robinson Road. We'll obviously find out more details about that once we bring him on here in a few minutes or a few seconds. Gary, what's going on? How are you doing?
Pretty good. We had a social last night downtown in Toronto, which went pretty good. We talked earlier about the possible recording of house clearances with somebody based in Burlington. There's a group in Burlington that specializes in house clearances, and they've asked us if we want to go and record and start getting some of this documented. So that could be pretty interesting. We've got the Customs House thing coming up.
Okay.
Other than that, it's just getting ready for the trip to England.
You want to dive a bit more, just a little bit briefly, on the gathering?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, the gathering, it's a social that we're having at the Customs House. That's in Hamilton, on Stewart Street. It was going to be just another investigation, but then I figured, well, it's a really good opportunity to have a social for all the paranormal groups in Southern Ontario rather than just the Toronto-based ones. So we've invited around 7 paranormal groups now, so that we can have representatives right across the board, with hopefully bringing with them a lot of different experiences and a lot of different approaches to how they do the paranormal investigation. So that the people that do attend this, it gives them a chance to talk to people that they wouldn't normally get a chance to talk to, because a lot of people are only meeting people within the meetup circles, and a lot of these groups are not part of that. They're more dedicated groups, they're more serious groups, and you don't normally get a chance to talk to them in an environment like this. So hopefully we can bring a lot of people in. They can meet everybody. Everybody will get used to the groups. They'll get to know everybody there. Hopefully we can run, I'm trying to hopefully set up about 5 seances that we can run during the night. It would be nice if we get a psychic from each of the groups. Also, we're going to have a psychomantium in the vault on the main floor, which is a pretty cool place. I don't know if anybody spent any time in there. It is supposed to be pretty active in there. One of our members at the last investigation we had actually heard whistling, and he actually recorded that on the recorder that was whistling behind him just as we were leaving. So we're going to set up a psychomantium. And if anybody doesn't really know about the psychomantium, it's an ancient scrying technique that the Greeks used about 5,000 years ago. And basically you take a seat at one end of a room. About 10 feet away you have a mirror which is angled so you can't actually see your own reflection, you can only see above your head. And there's only one light source in the room, and that's placed behind the seat where you sat. And you're supposed to get visions of relatives and things like that in the mirror. So we're going to do 15-minute sessions there, so people can sign up for that. We're going to have psychometry in the garden, 2 sessions of that. That's going to be run by Krista from our group. We're going to have a couple of Ouija boards. One of them's going to be up in the attic near the haunted mirror area, and the other one's going to be in the vault in the basement at the site of the tunnel collapse. And other than that, there's going to be hot and cold food, lots of drink, only soft drinks, unfortunately. And some good old chat for 6 hours, and it goes from 6 o'clock till midnight.
Hey, it's always good to be sober during an investigation.
No, well, it sometimes helps not to be.
Anyways, I don't want to keep our guest on hold much longer, so I'd like to bring in Dave here in a few seconds. We'll take callers in the second hour. In the first hour, we'll just get the lowdown on Dave as a person, and obviously the film, and the actual details and stuff like that. So, without further ado, I'd like to bring in Dave with us. Okay. Dave, are you there?
I am.
Hi, Dave. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're loud and clear.
Good,
Gary,
excellent.
Gary, can you hear Dave fine?
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm good.
Now, what I'd really like to know, I guess to start off with, I mean, you know, tell everyone what brought you to Port Robinson.
Well, we got to go back probably to the fall of 2000, and I was attending my second year of college, and I lived in residence on campus, and one of my good friends today, one of my best friends today, her name is Beth, and she was the night auditor at the residence front desk. And I went out to the front desk. It was in November of the year 2000, and I went out to the front desk, and we were just kind of talking back and forth about spirits and ghosts and things like that. And because we had reason to believe that there was some unusual activity going on in residence. So that's kind of how we kind of got on that topic. And it was probably about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I couldn't sleep. And it was quiet, and there was really nobody else around, you know, the odd student passing by, you know, maybe every half hour or so. But other than that, it was really, really quiet. And she then turned to me after about half an hour of talking about it, and she said, "Have you ever heard of the house over on Port Robinson Road?" And I hadn't. And I said, "No, what is the house over on Port Robinson Road? Where is Port Robinson Road?" And she said, "Well, it's only about a 5-minute drive down the street." And she began to tell me about this house, this abandoned farmhouse that was a ways back in the brush away from the road. And she proceeded to tell me about an experience that she had there, that she had been recently brought out there by her cousin. And Beth is a very spiritual person, very in tune with the spiritual world. And she told me about the unusual experiences that she had there, to the point where she started to feel very, very, very strange. It was a creepy place. I mean, she made that very clear to me, that it was a creepy place, but there was more to it than just that. There was an indescribable feeling that you got while being there that was more than I'm just in a creepy place. And she told me about this experience where she was in the back of the house, near the cold room area. There was a cold room in the back of the house. And she heard this unusual, her friends were outside, and it was almost as if where she was, they kind of vanished. Like, she could hear them in the other room, and she could hear them outside, but the main focus was now on this cold room, and it was almost as if they didn't exist. And they just, their voices kind of turned to, you know, very faint way in the background. And she described to me, she could probably tell this story better than I could, but she described to me this hissing noise, this really unusual sound that was right in front of her. And it scared the living daylights out of her, and she ran out of the house, and her cousin and her cousin's friends ran out of the house behind her, laughing. They're laughing hysterically, and Beth said, "Well, what?" And said, we got you, we were scaring you, And Beth said, "What do you mean you were scaring me?" You know, and her cousin said, "Oh, we were knocking on the walls, you know, in the other room, we were scaring you." And Beth said, that's not what I heard. And that's just a one example of the experience that she had there the first time, that I remember off the top of my head immediately to tell you. And she began to tell me all these other things, and I was really captivated by it, because I was a broadcasting student, and I was taking radio and TV and film, and I was really captivated by this. And I'd always had a fascination with the paranormal and ghosts and spirits, but I was 21, and you know, I was always a very spiritual person, but I had never really had any personal experiences of my own up to that point.
So you had a little bit of skepticism.
Healthy skepticism.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say. Certainly not. I wasn't cynical.
Yeah.
But it was healthy skepticism. You know, it's the kind of thing where I've never had, you know, an experience on my own, so I don't really know. I believe it's entirely possible, but I don't really know. And but I thought it was exciting, and I thought, wow, this is really great. And it was at the end of her story that she actually told me it was 5 minutes down the road. And I thought, oh, this is only 5 minutes down the road. And she goes, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, I thought this was like way out and, God knows where. And she says, no, it's just down the street. I mean, you go there right now, which we didn't, but that was, and I thought, wow, it's only 5 minutes down the street. So I went to bed that night, and it was on my mind, and I remember throughout the remainder of the next couple of days it being really on my mind, and I don't know why, it just was really there, and I guess maybe because it was only down the street. Had it been in Vancouver or something, maybe, I wouldn't have been on my mind so much because the chances of actually seeing it were highly unlikely. But it was just down the road, and it was really on my mind, so I made the decision that I wanted to check it out, but I wanted to check it out in the daytime, obviously, not only for reasons of the fact that, I didn't want to be creeped out too much, but for safety as well. And so I gathered up a few people, a few skeptical people, and a few people who were kind of really intrigued by it. And we went over, it was a November afternoon. It was probably, I'll be honest with you, it was probably about the 13th or 14th of November of the year 2000. And it was a cloudy, windy afternoon. And we went out there, and I knew the directions to get there. And sure enough, it was only about a 5-minute drive down the road. And Beth had told me before I went, she said, you're going to know where it is by the grassed-over driveway. Because she said, you can't see it from the road. It's way back in the bush. And so I told everybody on the drive out there, I said, we have to look for this grassed-over driveway. And so sure enough, we did, and I eventually found it, and we pulled the car over to the side of the road, and we walked up there. And it took us about a 5-minute walk to about a football field and a half away from the road, and we walked up through this vegetation, which was really, really thick and tall. And it was something straight out of a movie. I mean, I'm really liking this because, I'm thinking, this is great. I mean, already I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I could just shoot this and shoot that, and, I'm thinking of all these things. It was absolutely fantastic, the mood and the atmosphere of the location. And we walk in, and sure enough, we find ourselves standing on the front lawn in front of this relatively small abandoned farmhouse. It wasn't a huge mansion by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't something out of, The Hills Have Eyes or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or some, haunted horror film. It was relatively small, but it had a lot of character. And really creepy looking. And we walked in, and nothing unusual happened throughout the day. There wasn't anything that really, it was a creepy place, but there wasn't anything unusual that happened. We all acknowledged that it was definitely creepy and eerie, but when we walked in, everything was still there, Steve. Everything was still there. We had furniture all over the place. We had the kitchen sink pulled out from the wall. You had Christmas cards from 1973. Now, keep in mind, this is the year 2000, and these are Christmas cards from 1973. Strum all over the place on top of the cold room roof because it was kind of there was kind of an open spot where we could go on top of this cold room.
Yeah.
And there was the kitchen sink was up there, and broken Ken dolls and Barbie dolls and dot-to-dot books and a 1971 calendar, and it was just almost as if someone had picked up and left. Not really, because there certainly weren't any beds or anything like that, but it was unusual to find these personal things. It would almost make more sense to find a bed as opposed to personal things like cards and dot-to-dot books and dolls and, things like that. So that was a little unusual. But nothing unusual happened. So we all vowed to come back at night because we thought, well, why don't we come back at night? Because this is going to be really, really great. Mm-hmm. So, and we're playing along. I'm playing along. Really, at this point, it's all tongue-in-cheek. And we decide to come back at night. But having said that, at about 8 o'clock at night, and it's November, so by 8 o'clock at night it's dark.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And it began to rain. Not hard at first, but it began to rain. And I thought, oh, great, now there's no way they're going to want to go now.
Yeah.
But when I walked out to the lobby of the residence, there's everybody bundled head to toe in rain gear and rain hats and everything. They're waiting for me, and we looked like this entourage of this, these people trekking out into the wild, so to speak, to ghost hunt. We looked absolutely ridiculous. And but sure enough, they wanted to go. And I said, great. So I borrowed a couple of flashlights from the front desk, and we went out. And it started to team down. I mean, the rain was just pouring.
Yeah.
But I also brought a tape recorder.
Okay.
That night. And this is when everything changed. Everything changed because of the tape recorder.
Okay.
And because I had watched those shows on the Learning Channel and the Discovery Channel, those shows that they tell you about, things that a tape recorder can pick up things that the human eye or ear can't see or hear.
Exactly.
And at the time, I wasn't familiar with the term EVP. Back in 2000, I imagined the term EVP was around, but I don't know. Maybe it's a term that's only come into the forefront in the last 7 or 8 years, which really it has, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I didn't know the term EVP at the time. I wasn't familiar with it. I just was, I knew about the idea because tape recorders and cameras are objective. They're not subjective, so they pick up anything.
Yeah.
And so we went out, and it was pouring rain, and we're in the car, and our mood changed. There was a definite mood change, and you could attribute it to the fact that, yes, it was pouring rain, and there was thunder, and there was lightning, and the rain was bouncing off the pavement like those super balls you get, at those, the machines there.
Yeah.
Big rubber, balls there, and it was just teeming. And we were driving, and there was a definite mood change. The people were quieter. People were checking their flashlights. They were checking their hats and their gear and things like that. No one was really talking. You could almost feel that it was a different night. And at the time, I attributed the fact that it's pouring rain and there's a thunderstorm and we're going out in the middle of nowhere to ghost hunt.
Yeah.
So anyway, we pull over to the side of the road. We get there, and I turn to everybody, and all you could hear is the thunder and the rain pounding the roof of the car. And I turned to everybody and I said, do we still want to do this? And they were like, well, yeah, they said yes, but I could sense the reluctantness in their voice, so to speak. And but they said yes. So sure enough, we got out of the car and we walked across the street, up the driveway in the rain, in the thunder, and I'm enjoying every moment of this. Because I'm a filmmaker, and at the time I was a student, and I was like, this is great. But I also acknowledged to myself, not to anybody else at the time really, but to myself, there really was a difference. There was a point when you walked up the driveway when you would feel this energy change. And this was the first time I felt it. I didn't really feel it during the day, but this time I could feel it, and I don't know how to describe it. It was just a thickness. It was almost like, I guess it could be attributed to maybe being like you're 10,000 feet above sea level or something, and there's like a thickness, and you're having trouble. I'm assuming that maybe that's probably the best example, but I don't know because I've never been, on the top of a mountain, so I don't really know. But there was a distinct change. And it was very unusual. And I didn't say anything to anybody else because I didn't want to come across as a loony. And but I am convinced to this day that now they experienced it as well. And you could only see the house in the lightning flashes, which was fantastic. I mean, it was great. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I mean, this is so spooky and great. But at the same time, there was a difference. There was a difference in the air, and one of our group members began to feel really, really sick.
Really?
And she didn't want to go up. She began to get pale, and she began to get very, very, very ill. And I turned to her and I said, don't worry, it's okay, it's your nerves. Don't worry, it's fine. And she reluctantly came in. One of her best friends from college was there as well. So I'm assuming that was part of the reason why she continued to move forward. Had her friend not been there, she probably would have ran down the driveway back to the car. But her friend was there saying, don't worry, everything's okay, it's just your imagination. Things you tell each other when you get into this kind of a spot. And we walked inside the house, and some of the belongings had been moved. Some of the things that we had seen 6 hours earlier were not in the same spot. Now, having said that, there very well could have been other people there in the 6 hours that we weren't there. If there's one thing I've definitely learned from this whole Port Robinson Road experience is that you have to be skeptical.
Yeah.
You have to be, because if you're not, you're gullible.
Yep.
It is good to be skeptical. It is good to be skeptical, excuse me. Because more often than not, there are reasonable explanations for things. Exactly. There are. Yep. And we were aware of that. So, but we walked through the house. The house was kind of the same. It was creepy, and it was eerie, and the wind was blowing, and the thunder was crashing, and the lightning was flashing, and, it was really, really eerie. Then we walked out into the backyard, and we walked over by this abandoned car, and we're standing by this abandoned 1970s car.
Yep. And
we're just standing there. And the car is just kind of shrouded in the dirt and things like that, but, we're there, and somebody turns to me and says, jokingly, sarcastically, says, "Boy, I hope that was someone's stomach." And I turned to him and I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You didn't hear that?" I said, "No, what did you hear?" And the guy across from me says, you didn't hear that? And I said, "No." I said, "Okay, who else didn't hear that?" And nobody else heard it, but these two guys did. They said they heard this really, really, really deep growl. And I said, "Well, maybe it's a dog." We're trying to think of reasonable explanations. I mean, maybe it's a dog. I mean, it could very well be a stray dog out here. Who knows? And but they're like, "I don't know if that was a dog." And then I heard these kind of, sounds really cliche and cheesy, but nonetheless, it's a fact. I heard these chains, but not like a ball and chain, like a dog chain.
Yeah.
And and I thought, well, maybe it is a dog out here. But nonetheless, it really creeped us out because we couldn't see it. And at the same time, we're thinking, well, what the hell is a dog doing out here? That doesn't make any sense. There's no houses around here. I mean, there are, but they're way up at the roadside. And we're thinking, this is really strange. So we made the decision to leave. And we left, and we came back to the residence, and the girl who had been feeling sick earlier was starting to feel a little better. But she turned to me and she said, "Dave, I don't know what it is." Now, she was a cynic. Cynic. Yeah. Way before, because she was there during the day, and when I asked her if she originally wanted to go to the house during the day, our first trek out there, she said, "Oh, I don't know, ghosts, come on, you really believe in that?" And she was difficult to convince to even go out there, and she was very hard to try and keep serious, so to speak. Yeah. But nonetheless, she did. She was mature about it, and at night, I never saw a 180 like I did with her. Complete change. And she said to me, "I don't ever want to go to the house again." And I said, "Are you serious?" And she says, "I don't ever want to go there again. I don't know what it is." She said, "But Dave, there's something, I've never felt that way before in my entire life." And I said, "Well, I respect that, and I will never ask you to go again," which I didn't. And she never did. She never did go to the house again. And we went out there during the course of this entire investigation, so to speak, on the house in Port Robinson Road. We went out there probably, from November to April. I mean, we were out there over 100 times. I mean, all the things we did out there and the research and all that kind of stuff. And she never went again. She got as close to it as the driveway, because it was, I think we were ending school in about a week or so, and she felt that she wanted to go back because she wasn't sure if she'd ever go back again. Yeah. And so I took her out there, me and a few other people, and she got as far as the driveway, but she said, "No, I can't." So she never did end up going again. But anyway, back to that night. So we get back to the residence, we say goodnight to everybody, it's creepy, it's eerie, and everybody, there was a real different feeling. I mean, we're talking people who are in their early 20s, we're in college, okay, a bunch of guys, a bunch of girls, and there was really something different here. I mean, I had never seen this before. I mean, these are 20-year-old college guys. These are 20-year-old college girls. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Do you think it could be just the fact that you guys are getting all revved up to go to this very eerie place? Do you think it has anything to do with that?
Absolutely. At the first thought that came into my head was absolutely that must be what it was. Yeah. And but that night I couldn't shake the feeling I had. I couldn't shake seeing everybody kind of wander off. I mean, some of these guys are like, 6'2", 200-pound guys. Okay, I'm only 5'8", so I don't compare to them. But they're these are big rugby guys. And the change on them was unusual to see. It was really, really weird. But nonetheless, I digress. So I go to bed that night, And Beth, who worked the overnight shift, as I said, she was coming into work that night at midnight, but it wasn't midnight quite yet. So I went to bed about 11 or so, and I had decided to play back the tape that I had just recorded from the night. And I had my headphones on. And I'm lying in bed, and the storm is pretty much on its way out now, but I could still see the flashes outside. And I'm lying there in bed in the dark, and I'm playing back the tape. And I suddenly heard something on the tape. And it was a voice, and it was a voice I didn't recognize, but it was a very faint whisper. But you could hear it. I mean, it was clear as day. I mean, it wasn't like, well, yeah, I guess that kind of sounds like... I mean, it was clear as day. I mean, it was a for sure thing that it was a voice. And I rewound it, and I played it again, and I rewound it and played it again, and rewound it and played it again, because I wanted to make sure that, I was hearing exactly what I was hearing. But not only that, I was trying to, in the multiple rewinds and play, I was trying to figure out who it was on the tape. Who was it? Was it me? Was it, so-and-so? Was it this person? Was it that person? And I couldn't figure out who it was. Now, I had the tape recorder in my hand the entire time, and you guys are, you know how this is done.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know where you are, especially if you have the tape recorder in your hand the entire time. You're out somewhere. You know where you are the entire time you're hearing yourself on the tape.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, if you're really good at detail like I am, you know where everybody else is as well. Pretty much. And
you have other people to ask as well.
That's exactly right. So what I heard on the tape was the words, "my fault." It was very faint, "my fault." And it was a girl. And it was a young girl. I don't mean a girl who's 2 years old, but it was a girl that couldn't have been any more than maybe 10 or 11 years old.
Okay.
I would say somewhere between your maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, in that, frame there. I mean, she wasn't 19, she wasn't, 2, she was a young girl.
Okay.
And that's what it sounded like to me. So I immediately stopped the tape, and I thought, oh my God, I mean, who the hell is this? And I ran out to the front desk, and Beth had not arrived yet. I ran out to the front desk, and the girl who was working behind the counter, I dragged her into the back, and I said to her, I shut the door, and I said to her, I want you to hear something. And I'm not supposed to be back there because I don't work the front desk, and they don't want me in the back office, and yada, yada. But everybody liked me, so, it was okay. So we went into the back office, and I played this tape for her, and she went, what? I said, pay attention, And so I rewound it and played it again for her, and I had to rewind it and play it again for her because she was, she didn't catch it at first. And then she caught it. And she said, oh, my God. And she said, that sounds like a little girl. And I said, exactly. It sounds like a little girl. And I said, so it does sound like a little girl. She goes, yeah, it sounds like a little girl. She goes, what is that? I said, I don't know. What is it? And we're looking at each other wide-eyed because we don't, what the hell is this, right?
Yeah.
So then Beth arrives from work. And, then there's another girl that comes into the back, and I play it for her. And she hears it, but she says, well, wait a minute, there's something before it. And I said, there's something before it? And she goes, yeah, play it again. And sure enough, there was something before it. There was a gentleman's voice saying the word scary, S-C-A-R-Y, scary. So it goes, scary, my fault. You have a man saying scary, and then you have a girl saying my fault. And very distinct. And once you heard it, you could never not hear it again. I could play it for you, and I could put it on the other side of the room and play it for you, and you'd be able to hear it again.
Okay, so let me ask you this then.
Sure.
At this point, when you hear these two voices,
yes,
was there anything else going on in terms of any conversation between you guys? Was it in perhaps a response to a question asked or anything like that, or was it just you're recording and this shows up?
This is what I tried to figure out, and this is what in the coming days, because of course it got around Res and everybody wanted to hear it. Yeah. I wanted to figure out, and I have heard the tape more times than I probably watched the movie The Empire Strikes Back. You know what I'm saying? I've listened to it so many times, and just that part. And there are people talking. Absolutely, there are. Where I caught the voice is I'm standing on top of the cold room roof. Okay. And I'm looking at the Christmas cards. And I was up there with another girl, and down below was where everybody else was. But they were kind of towards the back, kind of where the back door of the house was, looking outside.
Okay.
So the only girl that was in close proximity to me was the one that was with me on top of the cold room roof. And you could hear her clear as day. I mean, she was talking.
Yeah.
And you could hear me, you know, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. And you could hear the other people in the background, way in the background, you know, like, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
And, but this voice, it's as if somebody comes right up to the microphone of the tape recorder and goes, my fault.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is it was in between conversation, though.
It was in between conversation, yes.
And that's
absolutely.
That's usually a good point on where to find EVPs.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And keep in mind that at this point I wasn't familiar with EVP. I didn't know what this was. I knew that this kind of stuff existed, but I didn't know what to call it. I mean, we called it voices on tape. You know, that's what we called it because we didn't know what it was. And that was really the catalyst, Steve. That was the catalyst that drove the investigation further. That was when we knew there really was something going on here. Something that Beth told me the night that she was first telling me about the house, and something that really stuck with me, is she told me that her cousin said that it was the perfect place to party and not be seen because you're way out in the bush.
Yeah.
However, she said, kids don't party there anymore because it got too weird. And that was the moment when I thought, okay, I've got to check this place out.
Yeah.
And when I got the voices on tape, as we called it then, that was when it became almost an obsession to figure out what happened to and inside this house on Port Robinson Road. Where are the people? Who owns the property? What happened here? We did a ton of research. We went to the library. We looked at the microfilm. We went on the internet. We went on, we Googled it, which was kind of new then too. Yeah. And we tried to find all sorts of information on this house. We asked neighbors. We looked all this kind of all sorts of stuff, and we came up really with relatively little. However, I did contact, I believe it was Remax, the real estate people,
yeah.
And they told me that the house was built in 1878.
Wow.
And but it hasn't been occupied since the 1970s, which we pretty much figured anyway, because of the Christmas cards that were there from 1973. So, but now having said that, I don't want to ramble on here if you have anything to, pitch in, but I do have other things to tell if you'd like to hear it.
Finish off this bit. Well, yeah, we'll get back into more.
Sure. It became, like as I said, it became an obsession, but not a bad obsession. It became so unique. People who wouldn't ordinarily be hanging out with each other came together. People who, nerds and geeks and cool people and, okay cool people and it became like this camaraderie between everybody. And it was almost like the stereotypes of the college generation were thrown out the window. And, but I will say that over the course of these 6 months, sometimes people would drop off. People who were really into it in the first several months or the first few weeks, maybe got bored of it or tired of it or frustrated. It was more frustration, really. When people would kind of go, you know what, I can't do this anymore. It wasn't really lack of interest. It wasn't really lack of knowledge. It was a big frustration for them.
Yeah.
It was lack of figuring out that, we just can't figure this out. And but there were a few dedicated. I'd say there was about 6 or 7 of us that were really dedicated, that hung in until the very end. And I, of course, was one of them. And but over the course of those 6 months or so, the things that we began to experience were unbelievable. We had a gentleman who went out there. I was out there one night, and there was a guy out there with us. Well, there was about 5 of us, and this was still November, and we're out back by the cold room, and we're doing our investigations, and he suddenly goes, shh, quiet, 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 and everyone is just dead silent. I'm like, what? And where he's standing, I can't see what he's looking at, but I know the direction in which he's, shining his light. And he's shining his flashlight through the kitchen window. Now, I can't see that, but I know that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he's doing that for about 30 seconds, and then he turns to us and he says, okay, we have to go now. And this guy is about 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. And we're like, oh, okay. But we just got here like 10 minutes ago. He's like, we have to go, we have to leave now. So we leave the house, we get in the car, and everyone is turning to him saying, well, what happened? What's wrong? What happened? And he proceeds to tell us with almost tears in his eyes, but not tears that he's afraid. It's tears like he cannot believe at the experience that he just experienced. And he said to me, I don't know what it was. Now, I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm pretty good with the quote because I have it on tape. But I am going to paraphrase because it'd be insane to try and, get it exactly. But he says he said to the effect of, I don't know what it was, but I was standing by that back door, that one that creeped me out that I told you about.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, but he said, all of a sudden, I heard a bunch of voices. And he said it was not cool. And he said, I don't know what it was. I heard a little girl and a little boy, and one said, don't do that. And the other one said, you shouldn't do that.
So he can actually make these voices out.
He heard them. And now this is in the car driving back to the residence at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I turned to him, and you can hear me on the tape say this, and I turned to him and I say, well, what did it sound like? I mean, what direction was it coming from? What was going on? He says, I don't know. He says, it's kind of like when you put your hands over your ears and you talk to yourself and your voice just sounds like it's in your head.
Yeah.
He says, that's what it sounds like. He says, I couldn't figure out which direction it was coming from, but it was whispers. And it was the whispers of a little boy and a little girl. And he said, and I'm pretty sure there was a guy there. But he said, that's when my flashlight picked up something through the kitchen window. He said it reflected off of something. And he said it was like a watch or like a badge or something, like it reflected. And he said, and I saw this guy, this figure, which I couldn't really make out, a silhouette, walking by the kitchen window, by the front door, by the big bay picture window, and over to the other side of the house. And I turned to him and I said, well, was there really someone out there? And he said, Dave, there really could have been an actual person out there. He says, I'm not saying it was necessarily a ghost or a spirit or an apparition. He said, because my light did reflect off of something. He said, my first thought was like it was a policeman, because it was like a badge, and we're college kids, or we're at this abandoned farmhouse, and, yada, 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 yada. But he said, but there was something about the way it was moving. And, of course, I'm freaking out in the car. I mean, there's half of me that is loving this, and there's another half of me that just can't believe this.
Yeah.
And everybody in the car is thinking, holy snap and crap. We get back to the residence. He walks through the residence door and sits himself against one of the pillars, which is holding up the roof. And he slides himself to the ground. And I've never seen him like this. And I had known him my previous year because I was in my second year now. Or then, sorry. Like at that point, I was in my second year. And so I had known him for about a year. And I'd never seen him like that. We ended up co-hosting a radio show in college about 2 months later. And so I'd known him for a long time. Very nice guy, really down to earth, and really unusual to see him like this. And he never went back to the house again. Never. And there was another experience when I was out at the house, and believe me, I'm summing these things up. I mean, we could talk till 9 a.m. I mean, there's so many things, but I'm trying to get to some juicy, good stuff.
Okay.
There was a time when we were out there in January of 2001. It was myself and Beth and one other girl. And we were out there, and it was cold. It was minus 30 degrees. It was pitch black. That was another thing, before I continue, is the darkness was indescribable. It was the kind of darkness where you only see where your flashlight is pointed. I mean, if we were to turn off the lights now, our eyes would eventually adjust. But this was the kind of darkness where, depending on the day, the night. I mean, if the moon was really, really bright and you stood outside, yes, you could see. But generally speaking, if there was no moon and there was a lot of cloud cover, it was black. It was it was the kind of black, as I said, where you only see where your flashlight is pointed. So you find yourself pointing around, like a maniac trying to, warden off any bad spirits, so to speak. You're afraid. But anyway, so it's January 2001, and I'm out there with Beth and this other girl, and I'm standing up on top of the cold room, and I say, we're just about done, because we've been out there for about maybe an hour or so, and we're just about done. And I turn to Beth, who has our only flashlight. I never did that again, I'll tell you that. And she's shining it on me, and she's shaking. She's not violently or anything, but she's shaking. And I thought she was cold, because it's minus 30 degrees. And I said to her, before I saw her, I said, well, do you think we should go and check upstairs before we leave? And I turned to her to see her answer, and that's when I noticed that she's shaking. And she's shaking. I said, Beth, what's wrong? Are you cold? Are you cold? What's wrong? And she wouldn't answer me. She was just staring at me, and her flashlight was shaking. So eventually she kind of snaps out of it, and I said, okay, maybe we should leave. So we never ended up going upstairs, so we left. We drove the other girl back to residence, and Beth and I, this is about 1 o'clock in the morning, we decided to go to the all-night Tim Hortons to get a hot chocolate. And we bring the tape recorder. So we're sitting in Tim Hortons. We're the only two in there. And it's 1 a.m., and we're freezing to death when we have our hot chocolates on the table. And we're listening to the tape back. And we get to the point where you hear me on the tape say, do you think we should go and check upstairs? And at that exact moment, Steve, you hear a woman, not Beth, because Beth didn't say anything, you hear a woman say the word, don't. It is clearer than Scary and My Fault. It is one of the most clearest EVPs I've ever heard in my life. It sounds as clear as this.
And it pretty much responds to what you're saying.
Exactly. That's what we thought it was, is that. And I just can't get over how clear it was. And we're there in the Tim Hortons, and we take a step back, and we're looking at this, and rewind it, and we play it again, rewind it, play it again, and we couldn't believe it. And Beth told me at that moment, she said, the reason why I was shaking was because I could feel a presence. I could feel somebody there. She said, I could feel them. I could literally feel a presence. I didn't know if it was male or female or who it was, but we were not alone in that room. And at that moment on the tape is when the woman says, don't. And it was remarkable. I mean, it overtopped My Fault and Scary, and it was just so clear. And it was a woman. It was so clear, Steve, that you heard her take a breath before she said it. You actually heard the, don't. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was amazing. And there were people out there that said that they saw orbs, orange balls, and sometimes red ones that would have. I'm sorry?
With their naked eye.
With their naked eye, yes. Oh. There were people that could see orange balls of light. Okay. Orange, yeah, and there were also people that could see what looked like to be the end of a cigarette, but it wasn't, but that's kind of the color it was. And that's what they always said. Like, when you would ask them, well, how would you describe what you saw? They would say, well, it looked like the end of a cigarette. You know how kind of like a red amber light. And there were people that saw this. I have photographs. I have actual photographs of distinct apparitions in them, white mist, and I have a photograph that was taken on a particular night where you can actually see the outline of two people.
Okay. I've got a couple questions.
Now, and again, I could go on and on and on, but this is a summed-up example of what the experience was like over at the house on Port Robinson Road.
Well, I think you got everyone hyped up here.
Well, that's good.
I've got a few questions.
It's just a shame there's not much left of the building.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
It's just a shame that there's not much left of the building.
Yeah.
It is. It burned to the house itself burned to the ground in February of 2002, and the only thing that's still standing, and it's barely standing, unfortunately, is the cold room, which of course was made of cement. But the house itself is gone.
How big is the cold room?
Not very big at all. I mean, it may be maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. I mean, it's not very big. But when the house first burned to the ground, it was worth going over there because it had just burned to the ground, and it was a neat sight to see. But now that it's been 6.5 years since it burned to the ground, the vegetation, because I was just there shooting the documentary for it, the vegetation is so thick, and it's actually grown right up through the remains that it's almost not worth being. I mean, if you didn't know that there was a house out there, you would never know that there was a house out there. I mean, it is just, you can't even see it.
The energy itself could still be there, though.
The energy itself could very well still be there. Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, do you know if the location, if it's still like a hot spot for people to go out there? Do many people still go and visit the place?
I would say probably not. I would say that 20 years ago, right up until my experience there, yes, definitely, because kids used to party there. And it was the perfect place to party and not be seen, and they used to have, all sorts of parties out there. But then, of course, it got too weird. But I would definitely say that at the time, it was known as a haunted house. At the time, we were not the only ones who would go out there, but I think we were the only ones who took it seriously, because a lot of the times, the people who would go out there who we didn't know would destroy the place. They would break this, they would break that, they would paint the wall, they would write graffiti on it, and it used to make me really upset because I used to take it really seriously. And I knew that it was only a matter of time until someone thought, hey, why don't we burn it down? And sure enough, of course, that happened, which is unfortunate. But I think now, like as I said, I mean, if you didn't know that, or if I didn't tell you, I should say, that there was a house out there, you would drive by the field and wouldn't look twice. It is so thick, it's unbelievable.
Now, during the time where you did a lot of research on the house and the area and the people that lived there, did you find out if it's close to any ley lines or anything like that?
The house itself is close to rail lines, but it didn't cross any.
No, the ley lines. For the actual, it's kind of like the Earth's energy.
I think.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, we never actually did that. We did find the owner of the property, who, of course, I will also who will remain nameless for obvious reasons. But we did find the owner of the property, and he lived not too far away from it. And how we found it actually was one night during our investigation, we were out in the backyard, and one of our group members noticed a pathway made by a vehicle. And it stretched across the field, and we're looking at this, and we're thinking, what the hell is this vehicle? Like, there's two distinct tire marks way in the back of the house in a field going from our house, as we called it our house, all the way across this field to God knows where. And we're like, this is it got really like Twilight Zone-ish here. So we thought, well, you know what, we're going to walk the path. So we decided to walk it. So there we are in the middle of nowhere with these flashlights walking this path to God knows where. And after about 10 minutes, we found ourselves standing in the backyard of somebody's home. And there were abandoned cars there, too, like as if somebody had been, working on them or, for scrap, or something like that. And we thought, well, wait a minute, there's abandoned cars here, there's abandoned cars at our house, this is kind of interesting. So we took note of where we were, and we walked the path back and got in our cars, and we drove by, and we found the front of the house, which is where we were in the back, and we got the address. So one of our group members said, I'm going to see if I can find the address in the phone book. And I said, you're going to see if you can find the address in the phone book? There's 500,000 names in this phone book. What the hell are you going to do? He goes, I'm starting with page one. And lo and behold, he did it. But thank the Lord that the person who lives there's last name only began with a B. So thank the Lord that it was the B and not, Z. But he did it. So we eventually went to this place, and we did an interview with him. And he was more than willing. He was an older guy, retired, and he was more than willing to... We made it sound educational. We wanted to sound like it was a school project, because when you make it sound educational, people are more willing to help. So we said we're doing a project on the house over there. He's like, oh, great. So we're talking about... Then I brought up the fact that we believe that it's haunted. And that's when it all went downhill. That's when he decided to, don't talk to me about ghosts, don't talk to me about that kind of crap, that's not true, I don't want to talk about this stuff, And he said a great line to me, which appears in the feature film, not the documentary, but in the actual script itself, he said a great line to me, point blank. He said to me, "I think it would be wise for you to believe only half of what you see with your own eyes, and what you hear, absolutely nothing." And the way he said it just gave me chills. And the guy I was with, too, was like, whoa, that's, why would he say that? We always believed that he knew more than he was letting on because of how defensive he got. We asked him several times, well, if the house is abandoned and no one's been in it for 20 years, why don't you just tear it down, sell the land? Oh, I don't talk to me, boy, blah, 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 blah. Well, why don't, we're trying to get really, legitimate information here.
Yeah.
And he was really reluctant. Once it turned supernatural, once it turned paranormal, I should say, once it turned spiritual, that's when we lost him. And we found it very interesting. But yeah, so we did eventually find the owner of the property, but he wasn't much help directly, but indirectly he was sort of a bit of help because he just proved our theory, more fact. So. Okay.
I just want to point out again, guys, this is you're listening to the Nocturnal Frequency, the very first 2-hour show, and we're talking tonight with Dave McRae, who's the director of the upcoming film Port Robinson Road. You can get more details at www.portrobinsonroad.com. Dave, is there anywhere online that you have these EVPs for people to hear?
I don't have them online at the moment, and the reason for that is because they will appear in the documentary Breathing Port Robinson.
Okay, makes sense.
So, yeah, what we decided to do was, Port Robinson Road was an experience that I'll never forget, and it was an experience that a lot of people will never forget because it was real. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm a pretty normal guy, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, and I'm not afraid to admit that this experience was real. And I think a lot of the people out there who were cynical or skeptical before, and there were a lot of them, are not so anymore. And I wanted to do the film because I wrote a script that is different than anybody has ever done before, at least I believe so. Most of the films that come out today based on paranormal, spiritual, or that kind of content, and dealing with the college generation, are very stereotypical. When you think of college generation, you think of, sex, booze, and rock and roll, you think of, partying, and you think of big boobs, and you think of rippling abs. I mean, there's a real cliche behind it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take that and throw it out the window. Because that's not what it was like. That's not what this experience was like. So I wrote a script that is very mature, very intelligent, and it's a drama. It's a drama, thriller, mystery is essentially what it is. It's not a horror film. Port Robinson Road is not a horror film. There's no blood, there's no guts, there's no gore. It's a character-driven piece. It's essentially about these group of college kids who stumble upon this journey, who are reluctant at first, but then at the end, it's a realization of hope. It's a realization that there is more to death than we know, and that's essentially in a nutshell what it's about. However, there is a synopsis on portrobinsonroad.com, so they can read a full kind of in-depth synopsis there. But the documentary we wanted to do to help gain exposure for the feature film.
Hold on, let's get into the documentary in the second half.
Sure.
What we'll do now is we'll take a short break.
All right.
If anybody wants to call in and ask Dave questions, you can do so by calling in at 914-803-4095. We'll be taking calls in the second hour if anybody wants to ask Dave questions. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back with you in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
Now you all must die.
That piece that you just heard was from Chris Alexander, a good friend of mine, and from his new album, Music for Parasites. called Creeper, and if anybody's interested in more, obviously, you can check them out at www.chris-alexander.com. And now we're back with Gary and Dave. You guys there?
Yep. Yes, I don't know if I can continue now though, because apparently I must die. So that was great. Yeah, I was getting into that. I was grooving over here.
Yeah, he does a lot of film-based music.
It's good. It's very atmospheric. I like it.
Yeah, he's definitely full of atmosphere. That's for sure. If anybody would like to call in, you're listening to Nocturnal Frequency, and we're talking with director Dave McRae, who is on his upcoming film, Port Robinson Road. If anyone would love to call in and ask him any questions, call in at 914-803-4095. Dave?
Yes.
Can you, I guess, get into the, like, it was great to be a part of, I guess, the documentary, even though I'm not really directly involved with it, but the interview that we had,
right? It
was very fascinating, and I can't wait for the documentary alone.
Yeah, it was something that I actually Bruce and I, who's the director of photography, and I've known Bruce for 16 years, and he's my best friend, and we decided in the summer of 2006 to shoot a concept video displaying the type of mood and atmosphere that I feel is vital to the story of Port Robinson Road. Now, having said that, I probably shot it too soon, because the screenplay itself was only into its first or second draft at that point. And the scene that you see in the concept video, although it displays great mood and atmosphere and tension and all that kind of stuff, will look a bit different when it comes time to the actual feature film. Like, I picture a lot more than just what you see there. But the point of the video was to display the type of mood and atmosphere that I feel is vital, and I think we've done a good job in that. Now, having said that, the girl who was in the concept video, her name is Chantel Landry, and she's a Toronto actress. And she's since we shot that, has become a good friend of mine. And in April of this past year, we went to Hot Docs 08, which is the documentary festival in Toronto, and we went and saw a movie called The Rise and Fall of the Grumpy Burger. And I thought it was really well done. I thought it essentially, to sum it up, was about the film was about these two guys wanting to make a film. And I thought, well, that's a good idea, and because it's so difficult, especially here in Canada, to get a independent film off the ground, I didn't want things with Port Robinson Road to become stale. Yeah. The screenplay is done, the concept posters are done, the website is done, the concept video is done. Essentially right now, all we're waiting for is essentially the money. And but in the meantime, I thought I have to keep on top of it, because the second you don't keep on top of something is when it winds up on a shelf and it starts to collect dust. Yeah. And even though the ball may only be moving at 1 mile an hour, it's still moving, and it's moving forward, and that's the way I look at it. So I decided, what if I was to do a documentary on Port Robinson Road? Not a intense A&E, documentary, but a fun, entertaining, informative documentary on the real experience behind Port Robinson Road. So we decided to do that, and we went into production on it in May of this past year, and we're just wrapping up. We're starting post-production now, hopefully for a 2009 festival run. And the title of the documentary is called Breathing Port Robinson, and it is essentially, it will look at the struggles that I face, in trying to get the film off the ground. And it also will showcase interviews with former group members who experienced the house on Port Robinson Road, the members that I was talking to you about in the last hour. Yeah. And not everybody, unfortunately. I couldn't get everybody. Some people didn't return my emails. Some people didn't return my calls. Sometimes for obvious reasons, depending on the type of work they do now. They may not want to be affiliated with this kind of a documentary because of the content and things like that, depending on their workplace or, whatever. However, having said that, I did manage to get quite a few who were more than happy to talk on camera about their experiences. So it will showcase that. It will also showcase interview with you, and it will showcase an interview with Tom and Lisa Butler of the American Association of EVP, and it will showcase a great and funny interview with myself and James the Amazing Randy, which he ends up hanging up on me. So,
so you're going to have that in the documentary as well?
I will have it in the documentary, and yes. And a funny moment, there's about 45 seconds when we're both talking about my EVP experience with Don't. And it's quite humorous. He almost called me an idiot, but he held back. So it was quite humorous. So those things will appear in the documentary as well. And I also take you to the actual Port Robinson Road location of where it happened. Now, there's, I guess, in retrospect, there's not a lot to look at compared to, say, what it looked like, 8 years ago. But there is, it's a neat experience to take the audience out to where it actually happened, and I think the appropriate thing to do in the documentary. So people who are intrigued by Port Robinson Road, intrigued by the story of Port Robinson Road, and intrigued by the paranormal in general, and are believers, and people who maybe are silent skeptics or silent believers, I think will find the documentary entertaining, fun, and informative. And that's what it's, about. I mean, it's clearly targeted towards people like the three of us, obviously. Yeah. But my hope is that it will be entertaining enough that even if you're skeptical or cynical, you will at least be able to watch it and go, well, it was entertaining. I enjoyed it. I got it. I get what he's doing. That's my job. And if they can do that, if the skeptics can do that, then I've done my job. So
do you think with releasing the documentary and the movie, it's going to spark a lot more interest in the location itself?
I think it probably will. We've done, I've tried to do the best I could on not to give the exact whereabouts of where this specific Port Robinson Road is. However, it's almost impossible to do that when you're shooting down there and at the locations we're shooting. So yeah. I'm not too worried. I mean, it could very well spark an interest, but I'm not as worried as I would be if the house was still there. For people like yourselves who are serious about the topic, I would imagine that anybody who's going to go to the location now, who finds it and goes to the location now, are probably going to be serious people. Because there's really not a whole lot to do out there if you're not serious. It would really be a waste of time if you're just searching for a good scare, because A, there's nothing out there but a decrepit, falling apart cold room and a couple of burnt logs, and vegetation that will eat you alive, and that's essentially it. But for you guys and for me and for serious people, you may enjoy being out there because, you want to investigate, you want to talk to the spiritual world, you want to see what you pick up on camera or pick up on video or pick up on audio tape. So it would be worthwhile to serious people perhaps, but to somebody who's just, searching for a fun time, I think it would be a real waste of time and too much task to, trek out there. So I'm not really too worried about it.
I was thinking maybe the older guy that you talked to, when you mentioned the supernatural, right. Maybe it was the interest in a lot of people coming out there for that, and he was just getting annoyed by the amount of traffic coming through there because of that.
Absolutely, and I think you're dead on, no pun intended with the dead, but I think you are dead on when you say that. That is something that we talked about too, and that crossed our minds, because there's no doubt that we weren't the first people that came across the house. And, so he could very well have just thought, oh, God, here we go again. No, there's nothing going on out there. And there was a bit of that in his tone, and there was a bit of that in his voice. But there was something, it's hard to explain. I guess you kind of have to see it to believe it and be there to experience it. But there was something about the way he was talking and the things he would say in his inflection and in his tone and in his approach that just kind of made myself and the other guy there think, yeah, there's something not right, especially when he says, I think it would be wise for you to believe only half of what you see with your own eyes, and what you hear, absolutely nothing. When that came out, we kind of thought, yeah, I mean, I think that he may have been scared beyond belief. I think that he might have had personal experiences out there himself, because there's no doubt that he would go out there by himself, to fill up the wells or to, do whatever he had to do, maintenance on the property because it's his. And it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he had some sort of paranormal experience that he tried to shut out, because he was from the generation that certainly was not possible and that's not true, and he was a Catholic, I believe, so, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. So it's entirely possible. But you're absolutely correct that could have been one factor.
There could have been some male populations like that, though, too. They find it harder to give into it.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, the male population is extremely because it's this male egocentric attitude that a lot of males have, and that's what was so different about the experience on Port Robinson Road. When these guys would go out there and come back, it would change them. I don't mean change them for the rest of their lives where they're no longer men, but for that moment, for the remainder of that moment, for the remainder of that experience, it would change them. And it changed me. I mean, I was always a very spiritual person, as I said, and I was always kind of into that kind of thing. But afterwards, having that kind of experience, I mean, when you sit there, and I can't, saying this to somebody who doesn't believe it or saying it to somebody who has to be there to experience it, which is understandable. But when I play back that tape, and even now, I'm in post-production on the documentary, and I actually just finished working on the part where we hear the EVP of Don't. And every time I play it back, because, when you're editing, you're constantly playing things over and over and over again to match it right and to fit it right, with the picture lock and all those types of things. And every time I play it back, I take a moment and I sit there and I think, that is real. That is living. That right there is proof that something survives the process of death. I have something absolutely incredible on that is real. It is real. And every time I hear it, I sit there and that's why I'm not afraid to talk about it. That's why I'm not afraid to say it. Because it's about time that we as a society begin to take this more seriously, begin to look at it more seriously. The one thing, and I mentioned it too in the documentary, the one thing that just irks me so much is when people have experiences like this are constantly ridiculed. They're constantly made fun of by the mainstream media, by scientists, by skeptics, and it infuriates me. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are people out there that are loony. There are people out there that do make up stuff, absolutely. But then there are people like myself and the people who experienced the house on Port Robinson Road who have really experienced these things, and we have no explanation for it. And we've done our research. We've weeded out all possible reasonable explanations. And the reason why we did that, guys, is because we wanted so much for it to be real. And we knew we couldn't just say it was real without weeding out all possible reasonable explanations, which is what we did.
We have a question from Malamud in the chat room. And
yes, Malamud, yes.
They'd like to know if you took something from the house or kept something from the house, like a book or piece of wood or an object from the house at all.
Funny, Malamud should say that because we actually I'll answer this in a two-part answer to his one-part question. The Christmas cards we actually took from the house because, long story short, we were actually able to find the people who they belonged to.
Wow.
And it was amazing. We actually were able to give them back to them, and they were astounded that we had them. And they were able to tell us that they did live in the house, and they lived in the house in the early to late 70s, and they moved out, and they knew the owner who I met, and like, oh yeah, we remember him, and they basically would rent the house from this guy, and we took the cards, and we had the Christmas cards for quite some time, but we felt that it was our duty to give them back to the family they belonged to, and those cards sat in that house for nearly 30 years. So, I mean, it was really a neat moment to be able to give these Christmas cards back to these people. Now, having said that, I never actually took anything from the house. But funny enough that this person should ask the question, because last week I was shooting some pickup shots down at the Port Robinson Road location, and I decided to actually take a piece of the cold room. So I have a piece of the cold room, not a very large piece, mind you. It certainly isn't, huge. But because the cold room is pretty much falling apart and decrepit and decayed and things like that, pieces from it are very easy to dislodge. So I decided to dislodge this, small piece of the cold room. Because the cold room, people who know the Port Robinson Road story and people who talk about it, and you talk to people about it, not just me, but like if you were to talk to somebody who's been there or, who experienced it, and especially when the documentary and the feature film eventually come out, the cold room is almost a symbol of the Port Robinson Road experience, because that's where we picked up our EVP, that's where our friend had that experience with the, the boy and the girl and, all that kind of stuff. So I took a piece of the cold room because I thought it was very symbolic. So to answer your question, yes, I do have a piece of it, and it is sitting on my shelf right now.
So are you afraid that you might have brought something else home with you? No,
I am not afraid, actually. And the reason for that is because when I would go into the house, I always made, and this is true, and this is going to sound kind of funny to the people who are skeptics and all that kind of stuff, but to you guys, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Every time I went into that house, and at first I felt silly doing it, but after like the 80th time, it certainly grows on you. Every time I would walk into that house, I would talk to them. I would walk in, and I would always say, "Hey guys, it's me. It's me, Dave. I'm here. I've decided to come in and see how you guys are doing." I would always do that. And then on the countless audio tapes that we have, you can hear me doing it all the time. "Hey, it's me, Dave," And we always felt a very, and we did, and this is true, we felt a very negative energy outside of the house. There was definitely something negative. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to go out and you're going to be killed. I mean, this is not a Hollywood horror movie here. Okay, so people have to be realistic by it. But we felt a very negative energy outside. When you would go inside the house, yes, it's spooky, and yes, it's eerie, and yes, it's creepy, but we always felt a more positive, a more inviting energy inside the house. And because the cold room is essentially inside the house, I felt very good about taking the piece. I don't feel like I brought, something bad home. I don't feel like, all of a sudden I'm going to have bad luck or things are going to start breaking or bad luck's going to go with the documentary. I have grown spiritually, and I feel that every time I look at that piece of concrete, which is sitting essentially on my desk, it's a symbol and a reminder that to keep me going, to keep me pushing forward, So so I feel confident about it. I feel good about it.
Okay. In terms of how you want to release this stuff, like, are you looking to release the documentary before the movie or together, or how is that going to come about?
Well, the documentary we're hoping to release next year. We're going to be in post-production pretty much through the entire remainder of the fall, figuring out which shots to do, which shots not to use. You'll do a first cut, and you'll watch it, and you'll be like, that did work when I was assembling it. Now it kind of drags, or it's kind of boring in that part. Because pacing's really important. Yeah. Especially in a documentary. Yeah. So, and sometimes I tend to repeat myself, because sometimes I'll say something twice at a certain location because I'm not sure if I liked how I said it at the other location, and sometimes, all that kind of stuff. So it definitely is an intense process. But our goal with Breathing Port Robinson is to release it, of course, before the film, because we don't have the money to make the film. Yeah. And we want to release it to gain that exposure, to create awareness that, hey, here are two guys who have done a lot of work on this, and here is this guy, Dave McRae, who is trying to get this film made, who wants to tell this story about this experience that he had with a bunch of his college friends. But it's not just to tell the story to make a movie about the paranormal. It's to tell a story about, the reality of it, the realism of it, that this is real. Here's an experience. It's based on the real experience. It is based on true events. I do have to keep the entertainment factor in there. That doesn't mean that I have the walls bleed and the floorboards move and all that kind of stuff. There is nothing like that. It's not. I have not stretched anything beyond imagination where it's like, oh, give me every. It's not the Amityville Horror here. Yeah. But the way I've written it is I've created a mystery around this real story. I've created a backstory that, based on the information that we've discovered on the house, to act as the catalyst for these kids. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but yes, we want to release the documentary before the film. We're going to have to because we have no way of doing it with the film, and hopefully it will create that awareness, and hopefully somebody out there will want to see it.
Yeah. How much would you have to raise to actually to start work on the movie?
Well, it's funny. I remember when I went to see a medium, a very well-respected medium, and she told me that what I'm doing is, and she's great. She is really, really good, and she's a no BS type of person. She doesn't try to present herself as she says, don't ask me for, figures for the lottery or all that kind of stuff. She said, I can't. I can only tell you what your guides want you to know. She's really good, really, really good, and very well respected, and dead on. Anyway, I digress. She told me that to keep documenting the house, keep doing it. What you're doing is good. She says, they keep showing me the American flag and the Canadian flag. She says, I don't know if some of the money's going to come from the States or what's going to happen, but I keep seeing Canada and America. And so I found that kind of interesting. But to answer your question directly, to make this film, it's extremely hard in Canada. To ballpark it, a couple $1 million maybe, which is not a lot of money when you're making a motion picture in the United States. But when you're making a motion picture here in Canada, it's like, it's huge.
That's a Hollywood.
It's massive. That's like the equivalent of an $80 million flick down there.
Exactly.
So will it take $2-3 million to make? Maybe not. I don't know. That will come when a producer comes on board or wants to come on board, or somebody who has real serious interest in the project comes on board, and that's when we sit down with the script and we weed through the script and we say, okay, this is plausible money-wise, this isn't money-wise, or you can do this for that, or you can do this for this, and that would be easier to get than this, and there's so much groundwork to do when it comes to that, but it's definitely not a film that could be made for $20,000. I mean, it's a low budget American film and a probably a medium to high budget Canadian film.
Yeah. Now the documentary, are you thinking about showing it at any of the paranormal shows that go on in the States or anything like that?
You mean like to
get more of the awareness going and more buzz around,
we're definitely as much as budget allows us, because obviously you have to pay to enter festivals. Some are more than others. I mean, on the ballpark, it's not usually that much, $30, $40. But depending on the festival and depending on the kind of exposure that the festival could give, or who could be at the festival watching, could depend on the price of the entry. However, we definitely are going to try and submit it to as many festivals as possible. Whether that's we want to target paranormal festivals, we want to target documentary festivals, we want to target we don't really want to target festivals that really have nothing to do with it. Like, if there's a specific romantic comedy, well, obviously, it's not going to be accepted for a specific romantic festival. You know what I'm saying? So you want to target it to festivals that garner the interest, which of course would be paranormal, spiritual films, and spiritual must not be confused with religious. There is a big difference. So to submit it to something that has to do with Jesus and all that kind of, that wouldn't be the film the festival to submit it to. But our goal, once done, we look at our budget and we say, okay, who should we target? You know, do we target Toronto? Do we target Sundance? Do we dare? Do we dare? Well, why not, right? The worst that can happen is no. Yeah. Or do we target the smaller festivals that where, you know, it could gain the exposure we need?
Okay, I just want to point out to the newer listeners, if anybody has just joined us, you're listening to Nocturnal Frequency, the very first 2-hour show that we've had. We're talking with director Dave McRae and about his upcoming film, Port Robinson Road, and the documentary. It's what, Breathing Life into Port Robinson?
No, actually, it's Breathing Port Robinson.
Okay, Breathing Port Robinson. Sorry.
That's okay.
If we have anyone who would like to ask any questions by calling in, give us a shout at 914-803-4095. It's not a local number. I realize that they're New York based, but if you have a long distance plan, it'll cost you peanuts.
That's true.
Yes, give us a call.
I've done it. Come on, ladies and gentlemen.
I've got a question.
Sure.
In the chat room.
Yes.
And actually, during your research, did you guys stumble upon anything linked to the evidence that you might have got in terms of deaths, any deaths in the house or anything strange going on?
Well, it's interesting you should say that because here goes Dave again. But it's true. It's true. When this how do I answer this? Yes and no. We came to the conclusion at the end of that year because I never went back to college. So I was done that year, and the house burned to the ground the very next year. So there really wasn't a lot going on after that. So from November 2000 to April 2001 was really the prime investigation, of this whole thing. And we picked up, with our research, there was a lot of he said, she said. There were a lot of rumors going around. There was a lot of abuse. A girl was raped in the house. Some guy back in the early 80s went out there and raped. There was all that kind of stuff that seems to surround any haunted location.
Yeah.
But it was just such a difficult thing to find. We could find information on the house that was current, families that were there in the 70s and the 60s, But to go back to when the house was built in the late 1800s, it's almost next to impossible. We went through police stuff, all sorts of newspapers from back then. We even contacted the police department. We contacted City Hall, the real estate people, all sorts, and they just didn't have anything that far back. So we had a funny feeling that our creme de la creme information that we wanted to link up with what we were getting in photographs and on tape and our personal experiences was way before we could even find that stuff. We're talking 1880s, 1890s, and it was almost next to impossible. However, having said that, I'll try to sum this part up. The Christmas cards that we found, we eventually, of course, found the people who they belonged to.
Yeah.
And I found a phone number. And it was, this person worked in St. Catharines, Ontario. And I called the place of where they worked. And I was taking a risk here. And this person, it was a woman, she had not lived in the house in almost 30 years. Okay, 25 years or so. So here I am calling her out. She has no idea who I am. I have no idea who she is. I only have a name. So I call her. Her place of work picks up. Hello. I said, yes, can I speak to so-and-so, please? I said, yes, just a minute. So-and-so comes on the line and says, hello. And I said, yeah, and I'm feeling ridiculous here. And I said, yes, my name's Dave McRae. I'm over at the college and blah, 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 blah. And I said, we're doing and again, I tried to make it sound educational. I said, we're doing a project over about this abandoned house over on Port Robinson Road that you used to live in. And she goes, oh, yes. She goes, yes, Port Robinson. Yeah, oh, God, that was a long time. It was 30 years ago, 25 years ago. I said, yeah. I said, well, this is going to sound a little crazy. It's going to sound a little ridiculous. I said, now I'm saying that because I'm thinking that she's going to think I sound ridiculous, right? So I said, well, we have reason to believe that it's haunted. The first words out of her mouth, literally, her reaction to that was, oh, it is. And I said, it is. She goes, absolutely it is. And that was music to my ears. Here's a woman who's in her 50s.
Yep.
She's never met me. She has no idea who I am. Lived in the house 25 to 30 years earlier, and she is telling me point blank on the phone, yes, it is haunted. And I said, well, how do you know what? She goes, I've seen things. And I said, oh, my God, wow, that's amazing. And I eventually told her briefly about the EVP that we had and things like that. And I think at the time we only had the scary and the my fault. So I told her about that. And I said, we have a girl on tape saying the words, my fault. And she goes, oh, my God. And I said, what? And she goes, well, I don't know, if, can the walls talk? And I said, I don't understand what you mean. And she said, well, my sister, when we were younger, my father, unfortunately, would get drunk a lot. Excuse me, guys. And she would say, he would, abuse my mom. Not horribly violently or anything, but he had a temper, and he would abuse my mom. And my sister always used to think it was her fault. And I said, wow. Well, I said, but she's not dead. But she said, but she hasn't passed away. And I said, wow. Well, I said, I don't know. I mean, it's possible. And I said, how old was she? Oh, she was about 9 or 10. And I said, wow. And I said, that sounds like the girl that I have on tap. That sounds like the age. And she was like, wow. And it gave us, she's there at work, in her place of work with goosebumps on the back of her neck. Here's this guy who calls her out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And she said, wow, it's amazing. So we talked a bit more about that. But that was interesting. That was music to my ears, that there was a woman that was able to clarify that we weren't crazy, that was able to basically say that, yes, what you are experiencing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing is real.
So what you basically captured was like an ingrained energy within the house.
That's what we think. Now, that's not, we don't necessarily know if it was this person. The context of the words are the same, yes. The general age is the same, yes. But is it the same moment? Is it the same person? Is it this girl? We have no idea. I really have no idea. Yes, if it is, then it's almost like an imprint. It's almost like a travel through time.
Yeah, residual.
Which again is proof of there's something there beyond human explanation. That's what scientists have to begin to understand. Science is a wonderful thing, and I mentioned this in the documentary. Science is a wonderful thing. We wouldn't have the advancements in research in medical research and technology and TVs and radios, and we wouldn't be able to do this right now if it wasn't for science.
Exactly.
But I think what science has to understand is that when it comes to, it's going to sound really crazy, but, it's true. When it comes to this kind of thing, not everything in this world can be solved by science. You have to think outside of the box. There are things in this world that we're not meant to understand. It's just beyond human understanding, like the universe doesn't end, or that Jupiter is 4 light years away, or the next galaxy to us is 100 million light. That's just mind-boggling to us. And this is the same sort of thing. But it's real. I'm here to tell everybody it is real. It is real, and it's happening, and it's wonderful. It shouldn't be feared. It should be looked at as something amazing, like a shooting star. It shouldn't be feared. It's a little scary because it's unknown, but it's nothing to fear. It's magnificent.
So with your experience with the actual events, and now with working on the film and documentary, do you see yourself furthering down the same path with another, trying to discover something else in the paranormal realm, or moving on?
Well, there's a lot of, I've grown a lot. I've become a more spiritual person. Again, that's not to be confused with a religious person, obviously, but I've grown as a spiritual person. I'm much more open. I see more, things make more sense to me spiritually. If you open yourself up, I do believe that we all do have guides, and if you are in tune, and if you believe in the process, they will notice that, and they will notice how hard you're trying to believe in it, and how hard you're trying to be spiritual and be open to it, and they will speak to you. Now, I don't mean, hey Bob, what's going on? I don't mean that, but they will speak to you through whatever it is day to day, messages that will come to you, whether it's in the form of a thing you find on the ground, or whether it's in the form of a conversation that you have with somebody, and I've grown through that, and there are things spiritually about the paranormal that I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, Steve. It's a hard question to answer. There's definitely, I don't know everything, obviously. I don't think anybody does, because everything is just based on theory anyway. But I think it is definitely a genre and definitely a context of a story that I would like to visit again. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'd like to do Port Robinson Road 2. I don't think Port Robinson Road requires a sequel. I think it would be a shame if there ever was one, because it's just cut and dry. It is what it is. Here's what it is. End of the story. And I have, but I definitely think it's a topic through the art of movies that I would like to explore again. We have such an amazing ability through the art of movies to be able to create wonderful stories, and that's the most important thing about any movie is a story. And there is so much garbage out there and so much junk out there that it blows my mind at the amount of crap, i.e. Hottie and the Naughty, that seem to get made. I just don't understand it. And I want to make films that inspire us. I want to make films that make people go, wow, that was really a cool story. And sometimes it'll be a hit, and sometimes it'll be a miss. That's just the nature of playing the game.
But the main thing, is it's out there.
It's exactly.
And that's what intrigues me about this movie that you're working on. Like, I'll be honest, I did not know anything until you obviously contacted me.
Yeah.
And then when you contacted me, I took a look at your website and everything else, and I'm like, wow, this sounds so intriguing. Yeah, I'd love to do.
Well, that's what it is because Port Robinson Road is a it's not a horror film, as I've said before. It's not a white noise. It's not a Shudder. It's not a I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's not. I mean, it's not like that. It's a film that is based on story. It is a film that's based on character. It's a film that's based on the realization, the realization. I don't want to sound like or repeat myself here, but it's true. It's the journey that these characters go through from skepticism to realization. Healthy skepticism, not cynicism. Healthy skepticism from here to believing and realizing that, what, this really is real. Yeah. There really is something out there. That's the story of Port Robinson Road. That's why I believe Port Robinson Road should be made. It's not there to scare people. It's to enlighten people, to make people realize, and hopefully I'll have the opportunity to do that.
So you're looking at hopefully sometime early in the new year then? For
the documentary?
Yeah. I guess.
Yes, yeah. The documentary, we're hoping, if post-production goes well throughout the fall, we hope that the documentary to be completed by then, absolutely, and then to start submitting to festivals. But normally a festival, let's say there's a festival in May or June, normally they ask for submissions quite a few months prior to that. So, if we're going to submit to, I don't know, the Paranormal Festival in Louisiana or something, I don't know if there is one there, but, for the sake of argument, and it opens in June or something, we would probably have to submit by, February. So our submissions will be early, but depending on the festival, you might not be able to see it until until that date. But I'm playing around with it. I mean, I think I'll probably post it on YouTube and things like that, and in certain parts, and hopefully it'll be an interesting documentary to watch. But it is geared towards the story of Port Robinson Road, of course. So if people have no interest in it, and I don't really care about Port Robinson Road, then they might not be interested in the film. So.
Now, Grant mentioned just before he left about residual energy at the location. Did you notice any the paranormal things that were happening there? Did they lessen after the fire, or when you removed the cards? Was the energy attached to any of the items that were damaged or removed, or was it just the same?
That's a great question. They definitely, I think the energy has subsided a bit since the house is gone. I think I remember being over there one night and telling the spirits, telling them to leave. I remember being there at night, and I was there with a few other people, and I said, "You can go now," because the house was gone, and I didn't, I didn't know how many more times I'd be going back. So I said, "You can leave now. You can go now. You're free to go." And I did all that kind. I surrounded them in a white light and all that kind of stuff. And I believe that some of them did go. You know that? And as funny as that sounds, I really do believe that. I remember standing there and feeling almost a relief. I think some of them did go. I don't think all of them went, but I think most of them did. Is the place still active? Yes, I think it is, but not nearly as active as it was back in November of the year 2000. I think a lot of it has subsided. So, but I don't think any of it. I mean, the Christmas cards were taken when the house was still there, so that didn't cause any problems. It really did. Yeah, I think the house burning to the ground. I mean, they're in a different dimension. They're on a different plane. Their energy is, spinning much faster than ours. So I don't. Physically, the fire wouldn't have hurt them, obviously. And whether they know the house is no longer there, I don't know. Or if on their plane it is there, I don't know. So I don't know if the house being there or not really has anything to do with them being there. It may have been attributed to the fact that I told a lot of them to leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know when you talked to the old lady who used to live there, and she actually made that comment, "Well, if walls could speak."
Right.
A lot of the energy is, or a lot of people think, is stored actually in the surrounding environment. So the walls, the wood within the house, and with all that energy actually burning and actually leaving through the fire, only the residual energy left would actually have been in the cold room. So it could have been the spirits that were more attached to that sort of location that stuck around, and the ones. If you believe in that sort of energy and how it's going to...
Absolutely. I believe in energy, no doubt. I mean, there are things in the sort, like I believe if you go to the Port Robinson Road homepage, the very first page, it says, "Not everything we see in life is real, and not everything real in life we see." And that's totally true. I mean, we don't see cell phone waves, or we don't see antenna waves, or we don't see radio waves and all that kind of stuff. There is a legitimate physical energy that exists around us all the time. And there definitely was one when we walked up the driveway of the house. About 3/4 of the way up, there was a certain time and a certain moment when you'd get about 3/4 of the way up, and woof, it was something like, what is this? Did we go up a mountain here? There was something, and it was almost indescribable. I mean, I really don't know how to describe it other than a thickness. It was thick. And that is still there, but it's not as potent. It's not as strong. But it may not be as strong because we've grown spiritually. It may not be as strong because we've grown with it, because we're used to it, because we're stronger now as people. Whereas back then, we were more susceptible to it. We weren't aware of it. We didn't know what it was. So anything and everything that would happen there was like, whoa, wow, oh. Whereas now, we're more spiritual. We're more open. We understand it better. And a lot of this has to do with understanding. A lot of the fear comes with just not understanding. And so somebody who has never been were to walk up there, they might go, oh, my God, what is this? And for me, it just feels like a change in temperature, like you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like much to me anymore. Or, having said that, maybe it really isn't that much anymore. I don't really know. But yeah. I do agree with you that there definitely is still some sort of energy there, because every time I stand there and I stare at the location where the house used to be, and now I'm just, I'm peering off into the bush, really. I mean, there's nothing there. There's just something, there's something. I'm staring at it, and I'm looking at it, and it's almost like I can still feel it. There is something there. But it's certainly, it's certainly not as potent as it used to be. At least not for me, and not for the other people. It could be maybe for someone like yourself, because you've never been, or maybe not because you're a spiritual person and you're very in tune to that kind of thing. It might be to somebody who's not, but I don't know.
Okay, I just want to remind people that the listeners that you're listening to the very first 2-hour Nocturnal Frequency radio show. I'm your host, Steve Junior. My normal co-host, Kay Kingston, is sick tonight, so she wasn't able to make it. I have Gary here with me, so thanks, Gary. If anyone would like to call in and talk to Dave about his new film, his upcoming film, Port Robinson Road, you can call. The call-in number is 914-803-4095. If you have a question, ask it in our chat. You can reach our chat at blogtalkradio.com/nocturnal_frequency, and you can ask a question in there as well. Now, Dave, if somebody was to come up to you and say, well, I shouldn't say anybody, somebody, obviously showing their credentials or whatnot, and said to you, listen, we'd love to do an investigation of this area. Would you be a part of it?
I think I would. I think, and this is going to sound kind of funny, but this is my own personal feeling on it. And certainly I don't own the land. I don't own the property. I mean, anybody can go and do whatever the hell, they want over there. I certainly don't own it, so I really don't have any say. But over the years, and again, I mean, this happened in November of the year 2000, so that's 8 years ago now. And, it's a long time ago. And I've always felt a very strong personal connection with not only the house the house itself, but with the location. And back in the day when this was happening, I sort of became the unofficial tour guide, so to speak. Like, I was always the one spearheading everything. I was always, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why don't we do this? And people would come to me, Dave, take us out there, Dave. So I kind of became I was thrown in, I guess, because of my enthusiasm and my passion. I guess people just assume that, well, there's the passion guy, there's the enthusiastic guy, he must be the leader, which wasn't the case at all. I just was really into it. So I guess there is I guess I would always be very appreciative if someone was to come to me and say, we'd like to go out there. We'd like you to take us out there, or we'd like to go out there and just see it. We'd like to go out there, and kind of see the location and see what's going on. I would always be very appreciative of it. But unfortunately, if I couldn't, I can't say, well, no, I don't want you going out there. It's not difficult to find. If you want to, it's not, that hard. So it is findable. So I can't really say no. But would I love to be a part of it? Sure, yeah, it'd be fun. Because, who better to be a part of it than me, who's been out there so many times? If I was in the position of somebody else, I would want to go out there with somebody who knew the place like the back of their hand. And because it's so grown over now, there are things you have to watch. There's still wells out there. There are certain things out there. There are holes. Certain things you got to watch for your safety. And I know where they are. So obviously, there's things like that. But yeah, it would be an honor, if anybody wanted to do that. But I don't know about my time right now because of the post-production. But we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Yeah, I certainly can relate to that because I know there's a couple locations myself that I've discovered in the last few years that, maybe not quite as active as Port Robinson, but they have had their activity, and yet I've come, a certain fondness to one location in particular.
Right.
But I can certainly relate to how you're answering that.
Yeah, it's one of the, I remember when I was teaching a voiceover workshop down at LIFT, the Liaison of Independent Filmmakers of Toronto, and I went in to meet with the gentleman who was there prior to the workshop, and he was there, and he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm so-and-so, and I said, hey, how's it going? I'm Dave McRae, and he's like, yeah, you're the Port Robinson Road guy. And I sat there and I thought, I didn't know how to answer that. I said, and he said, well, I went to your website, and I saw all this stuff, and then I saw the link to Port Robinson Road, and, I used to live in the area, and da-da-da-da. So, it becomes sort of, people look at me like that, I guess, because I'm the one I'm trying to get this made. If somebody else, say that guy who had the experience with, like, the boy and the girl, if he had gone on to do this, he'd be the Port Robinson Road guy, and he'd be the one you'd want to bring out there. So, I mean, it's just kind of like, it's just something that I chose to do.
Yeah.
And, it's something, but I will say that the location is, it's becoming extremely difficult to maneuver around, because the vegetation is so thick, and because there's so many, I mean, it's so difficult to maneuver. I mean, it's not pleasant. Excuse me, it's not pleasant being out there. And when we were shooting out there for the documentary, we had all the bug repellent on, and the mosquitoes and the horseflies, and and it's, you have to wear long pants because of the thorns on, like, in the bushes. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it looks like you're in the jungles of Peru. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And, so it is, it's not pleasant anymore, which is unfortunate, really.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left here.
Great.
What do you have coming? What else have you worked on? What else have you got going on besides Port Robinson Road?
Nothing, Steve. It's what I do. I live it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a professional voice artist, and I'm the imaging voice of TLN Television. So I do all the Sopranos and Everybody Loves Raymond and Mucho Movies and George Lopez and all that kind of stuff. So I do that on a consistent basis, obviously. And the voice work, tomorrow I'm off to do some voice work for some children's audiobooks, and then the next day I go downtown to do some voice work for Woodbine Casino, I guess the casino at the track there.
Yeah.
To do an ad for them. So I'm working as a voice artist. It's what I do full time. And if anybody's interested, they can go to my site, davemcrae.ca, and they can see some of my work there. But that's essentially it. I mean, because it takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
The voice work does, obviously, and also pursuing this film. And that's sort of what's coming up. I finished narrating this was last year, I guess. I finished narrating the second season of Final 24, which airs on the Biography channel. And I was hoping they would do a third season, but they didn't, unfortunately. So, but however, you can go to I think biography.com or something like that and see clips, or you can go to my website and see clips. So, I am active. I am continuing to push forward in the business and trying to keep things moving. But my heart, no doubt, is I have a passion for directing, filmmaking, shooting, all that kind. I mean, I just, it's a passion. As same as the voice work, of course, but coming down the line, I mean, it's essentially continuing to do the voice work and anything that comes my way, and continuing to push with Port Robinson Road. That's the goal, and it's my goal and my hope that somebody will, eventually see this and go, hey, now I think we got something here.
Okay, great. I have the Port Robinson site linked to the Blog Talk main site, so if anybody is wanting to look for the link, they can go there as well. Is there any other links that you'd like to get out there, Dave?
They can, there's that. You can put my site up there, davemcrae.ca if you want. And you can also put brucedale.ca. It's B-R-U-C-E, Bruce, D-A-L-E, brucedale.ca. He's the director of photography on the Breathing Port Robinson Road project. He's my best friend. I've known him for 16 years. He's a fantastic storyboard artist and filmmaker, and his website is currently under construction, but there's some great stuff on there if you want to go and see it. If people are intrigued by the way the concept video was shot, they can go to his website and see the man behind the camera. So, so those three, I guess, davemcrae.ca, portrobinsonroad.com, and brucedale.ca, if anybody, wants to. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can email me at info@davemcrae.ca. And if they have any questions regarding the documentary or Port Robinson Road in general, by all means, do not hesitate to email me. I'm pretty efficient on my response time. So.
All right. Well, thank you.
Any other last questions, gentlemen? Any other last questions?
Anybody
at all? Anybody?
I actually had a list of them, but we never got to go through them. So
Tell me one.
I was actually going to ask you. I'll give you like a two-part question then.
Okay.
What other documentaries or movies or movie makers have actually inspired you to do a lot of this, and which ones have left a lasting impression on you?
Filmmakers, movies themselves. I really loved the original Halloween. John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. Now that would be considered, it's considered a slasher movie or a horror movie, even though it's not by any stretch of the imagination in comparison to the remake of Halloween, which was released last year, which was absolute garbage. But the Halloween from 1978 that John Carpenter directed was fantastic. It was totally based on mood, atmosphere, suspense, what you think you see, what you think you hear. And I think he's a great filmmaker. Unfortunately, he hasn't had the greatest career since the 80s. His career's kind of been, he'll come out with a hit every now and then, but he's really not on the picture scene anymore. But he's a great filmmaker because he understands the mood and the atmosphere behind everything. It's what you think you see. It's what you think you hear that truly frightens an audience. We live in a day and age now where we see too much. We see it right in our faces, and it's not scary. Blood and guts are not scary. They're gory, but they don't scare me. And Spielberg, I mean, I think it sounds like he's a logical choice to pick, maybe an overrated choice to pick. I remember if he picks, but he knows how to tell a compelling story. Maybe Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull wasn't so great. However, going back to his early work, E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Color Purple, he's a fantastic storyteller. When he's on, he's on. And when he gets into it, he's into it. When he's on the ball, he knows what he's doing. And he's a great storyteller. And I think any filmmaker that's a great storyteller, I think film's Road to Perdition was a fantastic film. The mood, the atmosphere. I love mood. I love atmosphere. I love to make me feel like I'm there. I can smell the campfire. I can feel the rain. I can see the coldness. That stuff is great, and that stuff I hope to take with me when I make Port Robinson Road. I mean, there's a slew of things I could go into, but that's just an example of two films and two filmmakers that have inspired me.
Yeah, I can hear that with John Carpenter. Yeah,
he's great.
He's great, and especially how you explained it with Halloween. I mean, we have to remember Michael Myers. He was known as the Shape. Michael Myers is an iconic horror character, and I tell everybody, go and watch the original Halloween, not Halloween 2 from 1981, I believe it was, but watch the original Halloween from 1978. The only blood you ever see in that film, I believe, maybe on the end of a knife or something, and when Donald Pleasance is in the field and he's just gotten off the phone and he finds kind of the dead tow truck guy or whatever. You see like a bit of blood on the shirt, whatever. But anyway, that's it. The film was complete suspense, complete mood, and it worked. It was and it was a hit. It was a hit. Unfortunately, you bring a film like that now out today, and people don't like it. We're desensitized, spoiled little brats, and it's unfortunate. He was always in the shadows. Absolutely. He was in the shadows. You very rarely see. You didn't need to see him. You just knew he was lurking there. That's what I loved about the first Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street was a gore movie. It was a slasher movie. There was blood. But Freddy was scary. He was in the shadows. He was eerie. You never saw his face. By Freddy's Dead, I mean, he was chewing bubble gum and cracking jokes. It wasn't scary anymore. No. And that's what happens when you make 6 more of something good. It just becomes stale and weak. Well, then they met Freddy versus Jason. Which, that was atrocious all on its own. When did Jason become this hulking 6'6", 280 bodybuilder? If anybody watches Friday the 13th Part 2, he's a guy my size. That was my favorite, Part 2. Yeah, Part 2, when he had the pillowcase over his head. Yeah, it was great stuff. Human. See? He was human. He was human, exactly. He was human. He wasn't, I don't understand if he was, how he got so huge, but he did. Anyways, guys, we're almost out of time here, so once again, I'd like to thank Dave for coming on and talking with us about Port Robinson Road.
Well, thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate you having me on. I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much. But Port Robinson Road is the type of thing that there's so much substance to it that you could just go on and on and on and on. I wanted to get kind of a feel for you and your audience of what it's all about, so I had to kind of get into some nitty-gritty detail there. But again, I do appreciate you having me on. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Oh, for sure. Well, we'll have to get you back on for an update.
Yes, absolutely. I would love that.
Okay, Dave.
Thank you very much, Steve, guys. I will talk to you a bit later.
Yep, take care.
Okay, you too.
See you later.
Ciao.
Well, Garrett, what'd you think? Dave's a super nice, great. He's a great guy.
I know that it made it. The 2 hours flew by.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
He's
just he's full of, so much energy, but yet.
Well, he had so much passion for the subject. It's like I say, I had a page and a half of questions that I never really got a chance to ask, just because it was more informative to let him just talk about the documentary and stuff than to ask the questions.
10 seconds.
Now you all must die.
We'll see everyone later.
Good night, everyone.